My name is Magaly Colimon-Christopher, and I'm the producing artistic director of Conch Productions and the executive producer of the project you just watched, Aftershocks, the Tetralogy of Our Times. Thank you for joining us today for our final screening. Now, today's artist chat topic is new technologies in hybrid theater in the near and the far future. And we are pleased to have Donna Blanchard, the managing director of Kumukawa Theater, here with us today to moderate our chat. Now, let me tell you a little bit about this woman, okay? Donna, as I said, is the managing director of Kumukawa Theater, the executive team member of the Ohina Showcase Labs and Films, a community advisory board member at Hawaii Public Radio, and the president of Hawaii State Theater Council. Donna is an accomplished nonprofit and for-profit business development professional with more than 20 years of experience in business rescue, management, and alignment for strong resiliency, stability, and growth. She is also a published writer, voiceover artist, and award-winning actor-director. So I mentioned before that she was a managing director of Kumukawa Theater. If you've been watching our work, you know that Kumukawa Theater and Conch Productions have been collaborating. We've collaborated on 3 major projects. In 2020, along with Brata Productions, our 3 theaters formed the Reset Coalition, and we produced Reset Series 2020, a project that explored the effects of systemic racism from the perspective of Caribbean and Caribbean American, Nigerian, African American, Asian American, Hawaiian, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Asian viewpoints. Now, that collaboration was captured in a selection of short plays called We're Not Neutral, Reset Series 2020. Now, in 2021, we also did Reset Series 2021, and that is available for you to watch on our website. Donna, take it. Just take it over. This woman and I, we've been working online for a year and close to 2 years.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I really, Magaly, I want to thank you for all of your hard work and dedication and for relishing collaborative experiences as you do, because so much magic happens there. And I'm really honored to be here. To moderate this panel of artists to discuss this formerly unknown thing called digital theater and the hybrid developments born of it and what our future may hold. Because, I want to say over the last 18 months, we've heard a lot of politicians and celebrities and retailers telling us we're all in this together. And a lot of that rhetoric has only felt surface deep. But the artists and organizational leaders in the theater realm that I have spoken with throughout this pandemic have been so generous and sincerely helpful with their learned knowledge and skills while we all gathered our footing and found our way. And that truth of we're all in this together really tracks within our community. That makes me even more excited to introduce you to our guests and Johanne's dog.
Pardon us.
No problem at all. Joining me today are some voices that you really want to hear, including that pooch. Some of these people have been pushing the envelope forward and making it all work, making it possible for the concept of the tradition of live theater with live artists and live audiences to stay alive during a pandemic. And for those of us who serve Indigenous and diaspora populations to reach deeply into and well beyond our geographic footprints. Let's start with Johanne, rhymes with banana, or Kesten. She is an actor, singer, voice actor, and 4th-generation entertainer working out of Western Massachusetts. Her previous regional credits include Babes in Arms, playing Terry Thompson at the Berkshire Theater Festival. They were one of the pioneers in getting back on stage over this last year. And at the Berkshire Theater Festival, that was at the Berkshire Theater Festival, pardon me. Beauty and the Beast as Madame La Grande Bouche, at the Sharon Playhouse and the Newport Music Festival. Bill Toles is an Audelco Award winner and Grammy nominee. He works across specialties in theater, film, installation art, and music. He's worked with Amari Baraka, Sekou Sudiata, Craig Harris, Shimon Ati, Regina Taylor, American Masters, Diane McIntyre, Avery Brooks, Arrested Development, Michelle Andegiocello. I wanted to make that right. Metropolitan Playhouse, New York Theater, Volksbiene, New Federal Theater, Ensemble for the Romantic Century, Garth Fagan, and Black Rock Coalition. And finally, our beautiful Magaly Colimon-Christopher is a first-generation Haitian-American actress, playwright, director, and producer. She writes new works from a viewpoint heavily influenced by the stories her family members shared about the complexities and wonders of Haitian culture and history. She founded Conch Productions to support and showcase new works by Caribbean diaspora artists who have an expanded view of reality and passion for innovative storytelling. So now let's get started with this conversation. And I'd like to, this is, everybody can jump in. I want to keep the conversation organic as it can be, with me beginning with some questions that I really want to ask you all. And I'm going to start with you, Johanne. And first of all, I want to say, I love how you allow your voice to sit low. A lot of women in this country and others don't allow that. We put our voices up here, especially when we're asking for something, and we put ourselves in an unconsciously, I believe, we put ourselves in that vulnerable, weak position, and you just don't do that, and I love it.
Well, thank you very much. It's just always been my way, I suppose.
Good. It's inspiring.
Thank you.
So let's talk about your career during this pandemic. You've been doing live improv murder mysteries on Zoom.
Yeah, I did.
Tell us all about it.
It was a really cool experience. We sort of built it ourselves. We had no idea what we were doing. And this was something that I had done live at colleges in the area a few times. And then when everything shut down, we sort of said, how do we keep this going? How do we keep people working? How do we keep entertainment happening? Because kids were still in school, but it was happening from home. And so schools were looking for ways to create community that way. And so we took all of this, and we had actors that were all over the country. And sort of we had a plan of, these are your clues and this is what you're in charge of. And then we just kind of went for it, and trial and error made a really fun thing happen. We did, I want to say, over 100 shows in under a year, all over the country. We even did one for the Royal Air Force in England. And it was just a really, really cool experience to get to connect with people in that way.
Let me ask, let's get a little technical because we're talking about technologies here. I used to do murder mysteries in Chicago back in the day at live, and even live, it was difficult to make sure everyone who was supposed to be heard was heard. Mm-hmm. So you're combining that with improvisation and Zoom, which doesn't do well with two voices happening at the same time. Tell us a little bit about how you made that work.
It was an exercise in listening, and really with all the senses we had available, right? We're constantly watching each other, and we fell into a bit of a rhythm after a while. We had a few different stories that we would do, different themes, and you start to know who's got what on these great clues, and how do we get that in there, and then as we get closer to the end, make sure everything gets out. But it was really about paying attention to each other, and we had a chat going behind the scenes always, so that we could make sure if something was getting missed that it would get in there and things like that. But for the most part, we didn't really have to use a lot of that. We utilized the breakout rooms as well. We'd go around into different breakout rooms in smaller groups, so people had a chance to ask questions individually and things like that. So it was just, again, exploring the technology and what the limits were. and really paying attention to each other as actors.
That sounds genius. How would people find out? Is it still going on? Are you still doing that?
I believe they are still doing it. It's Theater Nerds, which you can find them on Facebook and I believe Instagram as well. And it's their virtual reality. Is what they call it, I believe.
I love it. I want to look them up. Thank you. Bill, let's switch over to you for a moment as we're talking about the innovative ways of using this technology. You have a really broad range of production experience that you were well suited to mixing it up when this pandemic began. Were you already moving in a digital direction pre-pandemic? And what was your journey through that?
I've been digital with my production since the early 90s. So I'm an early adopter. I've been doing digital recording when people were still working on tape. When I went to film school, they were just coming off of Steenbeck's and getting into Avid, and I was early on that and early into Final Cut Pro. So I guess my training as a musician and having to do things inexpensively and being able to do them quickly keeps me moving forward with the technology. The technology changes every 6 months, a year to 6 months. So I've been changing since the very beginning, when I figured out that the Beatles were only in 4 tracks, and I figured, okay, if they're doing 4 tracks, I can figure that out. And we've just been always up on the technology. That's what's allowed me to get into the industry ahead of people who are waiting on somebody else to solve the problem for them. So,
who would have thought when we were coming up in theater that we needed to be nerds as well?
Right?
yeah, well, I'm not a theater person. Well, I am a theater person, and those two paths developed, I guess, in parallel. So, but the music has always been a step ahead of theater and film, partially because unions control a lot of the technology. And so they are loath to put either their people in jeopardy as losing their jobs to a piece of technology, or they haven't figured out how to bill for it. So, but in music, that's not necessarily the case. We're true entrepreneurs, and so I've always led from that. I consider myself an enhanced musician. That's really what it is.
Ooh, I like that. And yeah, I'm not surprised that Magaly, that you've worked together, because Magaly, you have been amazing about finding the people who recognizing the knowledge you don't have or the skills you don't have, and finding the people to bring that to the table. You were already producing live theater and film festivals pre-pandemic, then Reset, which was a live digital theater series, and eventually pre-recorded theatrical experiences, and then this amazing production we just witnessed. Do you have a preference for live or recorded digital marriage between film and theater?
That's the thing. I'm always looking for a new way to tell story, innovative ways to tell story. And to say I have a preference would mean I don't relish one way of telling story versus another. I like the marriage. I do. But when it comes to producing and financing, let's see. Online is more affordable. Online allows you to bring people from all the way around the world to be involved in your project. The cost of flying people in and out and housing people is something that only large organizations can afford, and Conch Productions is still small. And so what I think that the hybrid theater opportunity allows is for a democratization of storytelling, that people of these small budget organizations and large budget organizations can reach an international audience via the internet with their content, whether you're doing live performances on Zoom or if you're pre-recording and streaming. It allows for that freedom, and it allows for the intermingling of different technologies. And I have to tell you, since I started, actually, we started with Blue Light Series. Our first online performance project was Blue Light Series. And it was very much like, let's just do this. I have a Zoom account. I got to work. Let's do this. Let's see what happens. Oh, we can just do it to Facebook. Just hit a button. Oh, good. We're going to do that. So my approach was, what can I manage with my limited technological ability? And what can allow the actors to interact with the text in a way that is engaging for the audience? Those are my questions. Those were my questions starting April 2020. And the thing is, in March 2020, at the start of our shutdown, I had a live festival, Hear Her Call, Caribbean American Women's Theater Festival. And the impact of having this pandemic shut down our show made me realize I've got to find a different way to produce work that won't be shut down by flood, earthquake, you know what I mean? Unless, of course, the internet goes down. That won't be shut down by a pandemic. That will allow everybody to feel safe as they do their work.
Man, do I remember that moment of thinking, we have to continue serving our mission. How are we going to do this amidst a pandemic? And I can honestly say that working with you in the Reset, we had done some things digitally, but really Reset and the 10,000 people who watched it all around the world really let us know that this is not the theater that you're accustomed to, but people will accept this, and there's so many possibilities there.
Yeah.
So during that, it's been amazing how we took these tools that were collaborative. You know, Zoom wasn't invented for us. We never would, but we never would have figured it out. So during this pandemic,
Can I say I thank HB Studio for introducing me to Zoom, because I teach at HB Studio.
Oh.
And when the pandemic hit, they just got us all together and said, we're going to use this to teach classes. And I was like,
yeah.
Okay. And at the time, Hear Her Call, Caribbean American Women's Theater Festival, had just sapped my entire budget because nothing financially happened that was supposed to. And I spoke to Edith Meeks, who's the executive producer, and I said, can I use the Zoom thing to produce? She's like, sure, I don't care. So love you, Edith.
Yeah. That's me. And that you recognized it and grabbed it.
Oh yeah. Well,
that's you.
No, it was really traumatizing to me when, the festival, because I met Bill in 2019 when he was a designer of our score for Hear Her Call. We produced the plays that were part of the festival. I met Bill that way. And so for me, that festival is really important because showcasing the voices of women of the Caribbean diaspora is so important. And to have this incident cause us to have almost no audience in the theater because they're fearful for their life. It just made me feel very much in need of another way. I was just really feeling I have limited myself by not opening up my heart to endless possibilities. And then TCG, the Theater Communications Group, had an online conference because of the pandemic. And that's where I met people who had been doing hybrid theater in Hawaii and Minnesota. And another artist, Tamala Woodard, who's actually now the dean of the acting department at Yale School of Drama, they had been doing hybrid theater for a while. And so I was like, I write a lot of magical realism. I need to further embrace what this means, Oh, we've got some great comments here.
Oh,
The audience is
That's
very
good.
Do you want me to read them?
Yes, please.
Okay, so we have, help me, Johanna. Frederique? Yeah, unmute. I'm sorry, I don't want to ruin your relative's name.
Frederica Borga.
Frederica Borga says,
My
I really
mother.
enjoyed this presentation. Finezia Farrell writes, this has been amazing to witness. Congrats, Conch. Frederica Borga, did I almost get the accent? Says, I love the way you use animation to transition from tale to tale. Truly a well-rounded piece, and really looking forward to watching the other pieces you've done. Thank you.
I absolutely agree. The animation in the piece really surprised and just delighted me. How did that decision process work?
Mixed media was my goal for this project, right? Because we had been doing hybrid theater, but as a result of the shutdown, a lot of theaters in Queens, you see, we got, as I stated earlier, we got 2 grants to produce this. And the intention was to do an experiential theater event using a space, because we had to do it in Queens, but most of the theaters in Queens didn't even know when they were going to open. So this was a grant for Queens, and it had to be produced in Queens, but I couldn't find a venue in Queens. So it had to be online. And I always love animation and its power to tell story. And I actually contacted Bill, and I was talking to Bill about my ideas, and he was like, listening, was like, oh, they sound good, they sound good. And then Andre Sutherland, who was the head animator on this project, contacted me, and I know he'd been doing animation. Honestly, it was God, because I sat down with God. I'm like, God, how am I going to get my vision realized? Right. And then Andre called me. It's like, oh, I'm going further with my animation business. I'm like, animation business? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And so we got to talking, and so I was like, this is how I get my hybrid concept, the mixed media concept, and this is how we embrace animation in our culture, right? Because nowadays they're so amazed whenever people of color are producing animation, but we're amazingly talented. And Andre Sutherland is Jamaican American. And I was like, okay, I got my Caribbean American diaspora mission achieved. And so then I just developed the outline. This is how I want this to be. This is how I want these worlds connected. Because the whole point of having only 4 pieces was to say, we're not telling the story, we're telling some stories. And how do we bring a community of people who are very different? Because the Caribbean diaspora, 28 islands, a bunch of different cultures. How do we bring us together to say how we shared this moment? And for me, during the pandemic, birds everywhere, flying everywhere. I would go on long walks, there'd be no human beings on the street, and I would just like watch the pigeons, and they're chilling like villains, and they're like, we're good, no interruption. I was like, the birds were the one living beings on the street with me, and I needed to have a bird as a character. And of course, animation had to bring the bird in. So
oh my gosh.
And the funny thing, my husband told me this story that he saw online somewhere about a man who was homeless, and he got sick and he was hospitalized. And while he was in the hospital, he had no human visitors, but this pigeon would come and sit on the windowsill of his hospital room every day. And so we were talking, we were like, do you think it was just looking for its crumbs? I'm like, no, they bonded while this man was homeless, and he found him, and he or she was giving this man love, right? So nature came alive, and those of us who were reassured by that power, I was one of them. And I wanted to bring nature into the story because squirrels and birds, they kept me focused when I was losing my mind during the shutdown.
I love that. I love learning the stories behind the artistic process, because you could watch this piece and just say, oh yeah, the birds are moving from story to story. I get it. There's so much more to it than that. And here in Hawaii, the fish and the coral came back to Hanauma Bay when the people stopped filling it up. It was a really magical time, and I'm glad that you brought that piece to it. And by the way, I always thought editors were God, not animators.
Well,
it's really good
Andre is
perspective.
also the editor of the project, editor and animator. So yeah, but yeah. So it was for me. I'm not a purist in the forums, but I was wondering if the purists were going to have a nervous breakdown when they saw all. I have montage. I collaborated with Marissa Joyce Stamps on the montage video. We have animation. We have hybrid theater. It's like, what is this? Is it a movie or is it theater? I don't know. I don't care. This is art, and working outside the box.
Yeah,
Like people like Bill Tolles, who's always working outside the box.
Bill is. How do you now that you bring it up, Bill, how do you decide which project you're going to work on? Because you're in so many different realms. What do you look for in a project?
Well, maybe just three things. There's three types of projects. Some of them I just give away. Some people need a start, and or they're dance companies, because dance companies never have any money and they work harder than anybody else. So I give it away for that. And then rigorous storytelling is the most important thing for me. You have to be looking at trying to build a new canon, but it takes rigor to do that. Just can't be anything. And then if you bring a certain amount of rigor to what you're doing, I'm intrigued. And the third thing is if I'm going to learn something. So you mentioned the folks being in the Yiddish theater. When I first got a call to work with them, I'd read about them and heard that they existed, but it's like, really, the Yiddish theater still exists? I thought it was something from a bygone era. Mm-hmm. And then it was something that was, intrinsically New York. And then after I got into it, I realized, oh no, it's a worldwide movement to reclaim this language and to keep this culture alive. And it's everywhere the Yiddish speaking population is, which is all over the world. So sometimes just wanting to learn something new takes me into a project.
I love that. And that's where it's working for you, because clearly your work is shining. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Johanne, I'm really intrigued by the idea that you've been using a social app that's been developed during this pandemic, Clubhouse. Mm-hmm. You've been using it to garner work, and that following along these lines, that marriage of what I enjoy also being something that's working for me. Can you tell me about how that works?
Yeah, so Clubhouse is an all audio social app, so you're speaking to people live all the time. When I found the app, as I'm in Western Massachusetts and I've been in this lockdown now for 2 years, sort of isolated here from any kind of creative community aside from what I've built at HB through Zoom, which is where I met Magaly. And I had just decided to come back to creativity in 2019 after pausing for a while to be a mother. And so then everything shut down and it just wasn't there. Clubhouse, when I got on the app, I found groups of actors who were reading scripts, just sitting around because nobody was working, nobody was doing anything. So we would get together 6 times a week and do a cold read of a script that we found or we had, just to keep working the muscles. And that turned into, there were also people doing scene reading rooms and things like that. And I started getting invited to do table reads of scripts for authors, for writers who are screenwriters who are working on projects. There were also people who are auditioning through Clubhouse and who are, I'm making connections with different people. I've done some auditioning on Clubhouse. I've done some competitions on Clubhouse. I did a musical theater competition with some people from all over the world, different casting directors and people who work in different parts of the industry there. And then, we move on to Zoom if it moves further, that kind of thing. But it's been a really interesting experience to have that kind of reach and to have been able to find those communities right here in my living room.
Yeah, I love that. It's like life will find a way.
Right.
Artists will find a way.
New technologies in our art form. Love it. Oh my gosh.
I know. The directions that we're all moving. Let's talk about, and I'm being conscious of time here. I promised I wouldn't keep anyone over an hour. I would like to hear what's on the horizon for you. Literally and where you want to be, what you're projecting out there. So for maybe we don't know where technology is going to take us, but what we're envisioning for the near future. So Magaly, would you like to start? Where's Conch Shell going?
Conch Shell, this is our last major project for 2021. So we're ramping up for 2022. And so the journey is to figure out how much will be live and how much will be online. So I'm on that journey. As soon as we're done with this, I start that journey. I really am really appreciative of all the apps and software and all these things that have emerged that has opened up possibilities. For example, we hosted a film festival and it was all online this year. And so when I process a film festival, I'm processing, will we be all online next year, or will we be in a space, and which city will we be in? So that has provided us the opportunity to continue with our international reach as well as our local reach. So the doorway for endless possibilities has been opened by things like StreamYard. Like I never used StreamYard until this event, and so I'm going to get to know this platform better, and I'm going to check out those rooms on what is it? Crowdfund?
Clubhouse.
Clubhouse.
Oh, yeah.
I should know that because every so often I visit it. But yeah, I should definitely check out those rooms.
I'll ping you.
Okay. So right now it's a work in progress figuring out the order of events for next year, and because when we first started out, we had 2 events a year, live 2 events. And since we've been online, we've had 3 to 4 events a year, which is a lot for a small theater company, and raising the funds. So in honest truth, after this is done, I'm writing grants and then, appealing to people to donate. That's my job, because that's how we get to produce the work, by getting people to give us money.
Amen. I have written more grant proposals during this pandemic than in 5 years previous. Yeah. And the technology keeps evolving. I want to say I looked into StreamYard before Zoom for production, and it was not where it is now. It keeps evolving. And I remember searching for a box office platform for us, and my office manager and I interviewing different box office salespeople, and us telling them what we needed. And they were like, oh, let me bring an engineer into this conversation, because they weren't the ones doing it. Bill, what's on the horizon for you?
Well, I'm going back live again, actually. So I had a number of projects that were halted by the pandemic, and they've all been itching to get back. And I made some connections with the people that I worked with on Zoom, and they're going back live in their markets, and I've gotten a lot of referrals because the Zoom projects were nationwide. So I'm gonna get back on the physical boards, but I'm taking this technology with me, because I'm pretty sure that people are now used to seeing things digitally in a live space. So sets are being replaced by visuals, visual projections, and I also do projections. And so I'm looking at enhancing live situations with this digital sort of accompaniment. If it works together, that's great. If I'm replacing it, that's even, that's great too. But it also requires a lot of research and going back to making sure that your visuals are production quality and cathartic quality, catharsis quality. Just putting an image up there, if it doesn't create the same thing that you were supposed to get out of a live experience, a visceral experience, then you're not accomplishing. Then you're just wallpaper. You might as well just put some red drapes back there. So in film school, they had us go to the Met to look at all the masters and look at what they did with light and familiarize yourself with painting, because that's really building with light from scratch. And so I have to go back and do my research again and dig in deep and also stay abreast of what's happening. Again, I would say pop music is what's moving the digital visuals forward, because they have to do it per project, maybe 4 times within a year span. And if it catches, then you have to innovate on top of that, and so you won't be left behind. So staying abreast of what's happening in pop music really helps you bring some fresh ideas to the table.
Oh, interesting. Do you feel like there's anything about digital theater that you're going to miss when you go? Well, I usually say analog theater, but you're really combining the two. But this sort of platform.
Well, no, because I didn't really do my digital theater, because of my background and my training and my also desire for complete control over everything. I wanted to have all the pieces and then mix, master, edit, buff everything in post, and then present it on a platform. So I'm still doing, my process is still similar to what I was doing before, where I'm assembling and controlling everything. So there's not a lot of improvisation in a live setting. So I admire someone like Johanne, who can get up there and do something live with people. That scares the bejesus out of me. I'm a control freak in that. But also, the people that are coming to me are looking for that kind of finish on what they're doing. So the scale, some of the venues I'm working in going forward, and the material that I'm working with, I'm doing Mountaintop coming up. So
Where?
that's in Arkansas. So and initially when I got the call, I said, okay, I can send some stuff to Arkansas. And then I realized, oh no, they want me to come to Arkansas and actually do it live. And so it's like, okay, yeah. And I've been doing a lot of live stuff here, but I've been controlling the environment because I'm also a production manager. So this is going to be one of the first instances where I'm just a designer and I don't get to say, oh no, these people can't come in until I leave the building or something like that. So it's going to be interesting. So
because we can't forget that COVID is still a part of our existence, right?
yeah, but we also, each of us has a responsibility to be aware of just how much agency you have as an artist. And you can say in your contract, this is how I want my environment to evolve during this production. and no one's going to say no now because it's always the right thing, and the New York theatrical agencies have sort of taken the lead with setting up a template that you can follow that keeps everybody safe. And so you really have to be aware yourself and be aware to inform yourself of what's happening on a weekly basis coming out of equity and et cetera, because they've done some. I have some friends who are on those boards, and they took great pains to make sure that they're not going to get sued on the back end for some nonsense. So the protections are out there for us.
So you would recommend that people watching go to equity.org to find out what's the evolving scenario, or is there another website that they should look into?
You can just go to the New York State website because all the guidelines about going back to live theater were done in conjunction with the state, because it's a major draw for visitors. So they're driving. Equity is driving the New York State mandates and laws around getting in and out of live spaces. So you can just go if you do it like you do it in New York, then they say you can do it there, you can do it anywhere. So
I think that along with protocols, our nervous systems are going to have to readjust to being in those spaces. I was just watching Made on Netflix, which is so good. Highly recommend. Some great performances in there. But when I watch things, and there's people in rooms together and they're close, I have this visceral reaction of, "Where's your masks? You're breathing right on those people." We're going to have to go through some shifts ourselves as individuals that aren't necessarily laid out in guidelines like that.
I have to confess that my choice to record everything on Zoom as opposed to, renting out space to record in different, in filming spaces was, one, the budget, and two, my concern about keeping my actors safe. And how do you have a craft table during COVID-19? And it was just all the components that are essential for, shooting. And I would not have gotten Johanne because she's in Massachusetts. And so, I had another actor in Seattle, and I got so habituated to having access to people anywhere to be in our projects that having the limitation of being on a set was illogical.
Yeah. And how do you plan? Because here in Hawaii, our numbers jumped up, and we had a show in production with our artists performing in the theater for a live stream. No audience, but luckily it was a small cast because suddenly we couldn't have more than 10 people in any indoor space. And so this was just August this happened. So the lack of ability to plan, that's another thing our nervous systems are dealing with all the time, right? I think that Johanne, as a voice artist, a lot of our work can be done in seclusion. Yeah, there's a sound booth behind me right here. We don't have to worry so much about it. But what's on the horizon, the near horizon for you?
For me, I'm actually shooting a film next week that I booked off of Clubhouse. And then I'm doing a live performance of a radio play on Clubhouse on Halloween. And I'm just going to sort of keep seeing what comes, what feels comfortable, what doesn't, I have started going back down to New York for classes in the studio. But everyone's masked all the time unless you're working, and everyone's being tested, and it's all very, very, very sort of, we're keeping abreast of everything at every turn kind of thing. And I know, it's it's a thing of, am I gonna, I don't know. I don't want to wait. Not that I don't want to wait, but I needed to be in a room with people again, to be acting with people. I needed to do that. But I've gained so much from this time on Zoom and from being able to have these outlets again, and the reach that we've all gained by having suddenly this access to everyone from anywhere that was always there, but it was always sort of poo-pooed as an idea before we didn't have a choice. And so that's been wonderful, and I can plan to continue to be a part of that for sure.
Yeah, we surveyed our audiences early on in the pandemic, and they did not want a digital experience. But then when we gave them one, it filled our Zoom. We only had 100-person Zoom room that we were using initially, and it filled up right away because people, once they got hungry enough, they were willing to look at a digital experience as a theater experience. And so there's some things that I'm going to miss about the digital experience as people go in person. First of all, my FOMO, because I've been able to see theater from New York, and I subscribed to Steppenwolf in Chicago last year. I don't have the finances to fly in there and see their shows, and I have learned so much about people of the Caribbean because of Conch. I don't want to give that up. Magaly, what do you feel like is your, you touched on it a little bit. Are you committed to maintaining a digital presence? What's your commitment for me? Because I don't want to lose it.
No, absolutely. We are growing our audience. Every day is one more effort to grow the audience. We've got to be accessible. And there are Caribbeans all around the planet, Caribbean diaspora people all around the planet. And if I'm trying to develop that voice, I've got to be online, right? I've got to be able to tell these artists, there's a place where your story may be celebrated. You don't have to filter it through the lens of the community that you live in. If you want to tell a story from a viewpoint that's influenced by the stories of your grandparents or your parents' people, then this may be your home. And you don't have to fly. You don't have to have lots of money. You don't have to leave your family behind to be part of this community. We're going to have content online. It's just a question of which of our events will be online and which will be live, and how New York goes, right? Because we don't know what's going to happen in the winter. But even beyond this period in our human history, we cannot pretend that our neighborhood is this small. Our neighborhood is the planet. And so hybrid theater, digital content, continuing to do pre-recorded events, it's intrinsic. It's intrinsic to my way of producing work.
I think especially for those of us who serve indigenous populations and their diaspora, like Lily Chung Crystal of Theater Moo in Minneapolis, they're celebrating the digital realm.
Yeah.
And we're also getting pressure to be analog again. Are you feeling that as well?
No. No, because people, I mean, I know some people who go to the theater and they tell me there's hardly anybody there, right? And maybe I'm not hearing what the audience is saying, but I'm not getting any feedback that says, "Oh, I miss having your work in the theater," because we're so young. We were founded in late 2018, 2019, then 2020 was the bulk of our journey. So we're so young that I think we could easily be identified as the online theater by anyone, right? Because they didn't really know us in 2019. So the opportunity to define ourselves one way or another is there. But my question remains, as I process 2022, do I want to be defined as an online theater only, or do I want to be defined as a theater that is both online and in space? And I'm never giving up the online presence. Mm-mm.
Well, I
Yeah.
think everyone is holding on to their online presence. I do a lot of corporate entertainment with larger companies, and they are still, even though they're going back to the live experience, and a lot of them are subscription based. So people are going to exercise those subscriptions and go back. But they expand their audience by keeping that online presence, whether they do it, I guess, what is it called, date and time, or something like day and date, or they post it later on. And I think it's important for the artists themselves to have something that lives on past the experience, because everyone is using YouTube now to discover things. No one can discover everything in real time anymore. And no one really expects to discover anything in real time anymore. So if you discover it 6 months down the road and then say, I've been looking for this, this is my thing, it's got to be there for you. So I think people are going to hold on to both situations, because once you discover something in that expanded time frame, when it comes time to actually get in a room and feel, the air moving around you, they're going to go for that. So that's my take on it.
Yeah. I feel like, so is what we've been developing, I guess we can call it hybrid theater. That is a wonderful term that bridges the binary between digital and analog. When Kumukuhua initially started doing digital theater, we made sure that everything about our performances was live streamed, and that creates a cacophony of potential issues, as we know. And the first show that we did in our 50th season, our most recent season, we rehearsed. We always rehearse in the evenings. We're community-based theater, and we open the show on a Thursday night, and we have Thursday and Friday and Saturday. And someone on Saturday night said, my lighting's going to be different for the matinee on Sunday. We hadn't even dreamed that all of a sudden we've got to get blackout curtains to 12 different actors all over the island.
Oh my gosh.
So we ended up, while we tried to figure it out, how to get this to everyone, we just showed a recording. And we felt like it was blasphemous initially to do that. And what all of us are realizing is it's still theater. Mm-hmm. It's not a movie. It's not a television show. It's still theater something. So it's hybrid theater. I'm going to take that away.
Tyler Perry has been doing hybrid theater for ever. I'm sorry, Bill, what were you saying?
I disagree that it's theater.
Really?
I think it's film. And I think the sooner people and you ran into a film issue, and the sooner that people understand that it is film, and you have to abide by 100 years of tradition in how film is produced, then you can avoid those kinds of mistakes. But to think that you could just jump into it and it's theater, it's not theater, it's film. Once you start to turn a camera on and add lights, it is film. And people need to just expand their training and their background and get that in their vocabulary. Otherwise, you're going to run into those kinds of situations and be scrambling at the last minute, and that's not a great idea.
So that's a deep statement. The moment you turn a camera on, it is film.
Mm-hmm.
That's
because
room for a huge debate.
Because with a camera, you are making a choice as to where the audience is going to look and what goes into that frame. On a stage, you can say, you're following what the actor, the main actor who's speaking is doing, but then the character who is giving that snarky response and not saying a word 15 feet away is also in your eye line. And those kinds of things you have to, and that's part of what happens. And then also the audience response to that snarky response is part of it. Film does not give you that luxury. It's like, this is what we're looking at right now. This is what we're looking at then. This is what we're looking, et cetera, et cetera. And when you do that, when you point a camera at someone like me, you better frame it properly so it's interesting.
Okay, so when we think about the performances that are online that are not pre-recorded, which is what Conch Productions has primarily done, other than this project that we presented today and for the past 3 days, then you see the question is, when is it the director's medium and when is it the actor's medium? Because when it's live, it's the actor's medium, because you don't know what's going to happen.
Well, you don't know what the actor's going to do.
Presentation. They could change everything that the director did. So what were you saying, Bill?
They could change everything the director did? Oh, my goodness.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you've never experienced. Oh, my goodness. You could direct from here to next year. But when it's a live camera and they're performing live on Zoom, everything you did could go out the window if the actor just has a sudden inspiration. Whereas film, the director is controlling it, because in the end, they're in the cutting room and they're saying, I'm going to use that take, this take. So theater is the actor's medium. That's my saying. And film is director's medium.
Okay.
Oh,
we can agree to disagree on that one.
If what we've been doing is film, then I'm not serving my mission anymore. Because it's got theater all over it.
Yeah, well, that's why
there was a great filmed theater piece during this process. The television show that used to be that was about the White House, the Democrats in the White House with what was that called?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Right.
It's all that snappy banter.
All that snappy banter, right. But they did it on a stage and they moved, set pieces in and out, and camera angles were adjusted and prepared. Still storyboarded to a fare thee well, still lit and prepared to a fare thee well, but there was room in that space for actors to do whatever they had to do. But it was film. It was film, and the production quality and the ability to hold your attention for however long that was, which was a long piece compared to the theater that we've been doing. We've been shortening things to make sure that you don't, exhaust your audience. But it allowed you, the production level and the preparation allowed you to tell that story in a theatrical setting, but with film technique.
All right. And on that note, I see Magaly thinking over there.
No,
I got no more questions for you.
I've been seeing content like that on All Black, and I think on BET and some other of the apps that they have, the content where it is like a theatrical piece, but there's a live audience, kind of like the Cosby Show, how they used to do the Cosby Show, but it's being filmed, but the videography definitely looks theatrical, and the actors are playing the proscenium.
Yeah, well, 3-camera shoots have been in, since I Love Lucy. That works in television, and we understand that you can do all of that on one stage. So that's a tried and true technology. That's what I mean about familiarizing yourself and understanding the existing technologies, and bringing that into what you're doing going forward.
I think we got this comment from Jason Real. Also, West Side Story did something that was a hybrid on stage with the use of live film of the actors in more intimate spaces. So I think what's really amazing, what we're discovering in this discussion, is that it's a discussion, right? It's an emerging conversation, and it's going to lead to like exciting conversations and redefining and finding new vocabulary. So when they say that, theater is defined, it's not. right? And it could be called film theater or theater film or whatever we're going to call it. The label doesn't matter,
That's
right?
true. You know, people thought that Waiting for Godot wasn't theater when it first came out, you know? So we all have to grow and expand what it is we decide is theater.
Innovation.
Yeah. I'm so happy that to be here with you all, to be a part of this conversation, and being able to recognize that we're not here to answer we answer some questions, but then to just ask more. And I love being a part of all of this moving forward. And I really appreciate meeting each of you. And I perhaps could work with all of you again someday. I'll definitely be working with Magaly again soon. Now I'm just going to sit here with my blown mind. Magaly, take it away.
All right. So we're closing this conversation, everyone. I want to thank everyone, Anna, Bill, Donna, for being on board to be part of this chat. And I want to thank you, our audience members, for joining us this afternoon for our final screening. But as you know, this conversation continues, and I want you to like us on Facebook and all these different social media apps. And if you're going to have a conversation about this medium, please invite me to attend, because I want to hear what is emerging in the industry. As you know, we are also paying it forward by raising funds for Copper Care. So go to our website, click on our link, and donate to support the work that they're doing in Haiti. Stay connected with Conch Productions. Just go to our website that's down there, and keep in touch, because we're going to continue doing the work. And Donna wanted to get a little inside scoop, but you got to be involved with us to find out what's emerging. Okay, I'm gonna. There's a teaser. Keep involved. Have a lovely, lovely weekend, and good afternoon. Be well. Be safe. Till next time. Big heart. Big heart.
Thank you all.